Hi guys, and welcome to Crypto Exposed. Okay guys, got an article here and I want to go through this because this is in regards to basically the way you want to utilize your XRP, and I've done a lot of videos trying to cover different aspects of how you can basically use XRP to basically make money without actually having to sell the XRP. And so I want to just go through this and then I'm going to give you my thoughts, because obviously I've always been trying to show you guys different ways to be able to make money with XRP. I've never really told you my full thoughts, so I'm going to give you an idea of what I think so far in regards to this, but also just show you the benefits too. So the article says, quote, "Don't just hold XRP," unquote. Evernorth CEO shares his vision for the token's future. Okay, so let's get into it then. Quote, "Don't just hold assets, put them to work," unquote. Berler said Evernorth views XRP as an operational asset rather than a passive treasury holding. He explained that blockchain's value goes beyond asset ownership. On-chain strategies can make digital assets more productive by creating new ways to generate returns. Quote, "We see significance in being active beings, not just passive vehicles," unquote, Berler said. He added that Evernorth plans to build yield-generating strategies around XRP on the XRP ledger. Berler believes companies will increasingly seek ways to generate returns from tokenized real-world assets rather than leaving them idle. He said Evernorth believes the XRP ledger is well positioned to support this shift. Yeah, and this is where I will say, when it comes to, trying to generate a yield from XRP, right, trying to make passive income or just some extra money on the side, it really does come down to what you're going to do to try and get that yield, right? So some avenues will be safer than others. So for example, when we talk about tokenization, let's say we get to a point where, properties are regularly tokenized on the ledger. And it could be that, for example, you want to invest into a property. Now, because of tokenization, you'll have something called fractionalized ownership, which basically means that before, when you'd want to, basically invest into a property to maybe be a landlord, for example, you would need, let's say $20,000 to $30,000 to put down as a deposit, right? Well, with fractionalized ownership, it's going to make it a lot easier, because they will say, hey, look, if you just want to buy a 1% stake in this property, you can, and you will generate a yield from that stake. So even if you've only got, for example, let's just say $1,000, right? You've saved up $1,000 and you just want to invest it, right? You've saved it up and you've got that money there. You want to invest it in some way. Well, now you could invest that $1,000 into that property and you'll just get a percentage on that $1,000. So when before, you wasn't able to get into the property market because you didn't have enough money, now even a small amount could still help you generate a yield, because you'll be able to invest in these properties with smaller amounts of money. So it really comes down to where you're going to go in regards to trying to generate a yield. So for example, if you want to use XRP as collateral for a loan, well, in that regard, you want to think, okay, what's the the threshold in terms of getting liquidated, for example, right? So you might look at it in this sense of, okay, at this point in time, it would be safer to invest into a property and just get, a lower yield on that property, because it's not going to be as volatile as the crypto market, because you could invest and get a loan, right, with your XRP. But if, for example, there's a threshold where you just get instantly liquidated, well, with how volatile the crypto market is, it's more likely that could happen, right? Because, let's just say you take out a loan and you're in the middle of a bull run. Everything's looking great right now. XRP's price could be at an all-time highs and stuff like that. But then it then drops into the depths of a bear market. And then what if you just get completely liquidated? So you might think, okay, great, I've got this money at the peak of the cycle, but then it drops into a bear market, and then you lose your XRP, you get liquidated because the drop was so significant. So that's where you've got to think about, okay, while this might give me the most yield, it also might have a lot more risk. So you've got to think about how you're going to, invest, how you're going to generate your yield while using your XRP. That's definitely going to be something that you're going to need to think about. Okay. Then we've got XRP legacy strong RWA growth. Berler also addressed concerns about digital asset treasury (DAT) models during recent crypto market weakness. He said Evernorth's approach is different from companies that simply accumulate cryptocurrencies. Instead, the company plans to actively operate on-chain by using decentralized finance tools built on the XRP ledger. As a sign of growing adoption, Berler pointed to the rise of tokenized real-world assets on the XRP ledger. He said the market has grown to approximately $3.6 billion, representing around 24 times growth over the past year. According to Berler, these figures show growing confidence in blockchain-based financial markets and the future of tokenization. Yeah, so if you're ever unsure about these digital asset treasury models, look no further than Michael Saylor, right, who's got Strategy, which has really just been a company that just switched to just buying loads of Bitcoin. Like, I'll be honest with you, it's not great. If you've been watching, he was someone who said never sell Bitcoin, and now he's having to sell Bitcoin. Like, it just wasn't a good approach. His whole thing was just banking on he'll buy enough at a point in time where, the bull run will come in and they'll just make a load of money. It was not a very forward thinking strategy, to be honest with you. So I agree. I don't think you should just be accumulating cryptocurrencies, because everyone can do that, right? Like, us as retail holders can just buy cryptocurrencies. Even if we just dollar cost average, it might not be the same amount as, what these whales can buy and these big companies can buy, but we can still do it and reap the rewards of whatever we do put in. Why would you want to give this money over to some other company who are just doing the same thing ultimately with just a bigger bank balance? That's it. I'd rather have the money there, because, that company could go bankrupt or something like that, right? So you're having to put trust in this company and hope that they are managing it properly and that you're not going to lose your money. Whereas if you just do it yourself, yes, the returns might not be as big, but to be honest with you, the returns sounded too good to be true anyway. Like, as soon as people was hearing, the business model, and the returns that he was claiming that, people would get, everybody was like, this just sounds like a Ponzi scheme. Like, it just sounds ridiculous. So, you've got to think again about risk and reward. Is it a thing where you want to take the risk of going with, a company like Sailors and just say, okay, I'm just going to take the risk and try and get the high reward, but this company could go bankrupt and I lose my money? Or am I going to just dollar cost average and then I get to keep my crypto, I'll manage it myself, and I may not earn as much, but, I'll have that to myself and I can manage it all on my own, and I trust myself more than, some other company. Obviously, again, it comes down to your risk appetite. So I do agree with this overall. I don't think, the digital asset treasury models was a good idea. I don't think they are a good idea overall. I don't really think they're a viable business model, to be honest with you. So again, that's just something to think about. Okay, moving on. RLUSD boosts activity on the XRP ledger. Berler also highlighted the growing role of Ripple's US dollar-backed stablecoin, RLUSD, within the XRP ecosystem. He said activity on the XRP ledger has increased significantly since RLUSD launched. Transactions settled in US dollars and RLUSD have grown 12-fold. Berler said the global importance of the US dollar makes regulated dollar-backed stablecoins an important part of tokenized financial markets. He added that about 54.74% of RLUSD currently circulates on the XRP ledger, while the remaining supply is issued on Ethereum. He expects even more activity to move onto the XRP ledger over time. Yeah, so the reason why I just wanted to point this one out is because, a lot of people worry about RLUSD replacing XRP. But if we just go back to what was said here, Berler said the activity on the XRP ledger has increased significantly since RLUSD launched. So this is the thing, right? The way you've got to understand this in terms of RLUSD is this. There's a lot of companies that don't necessarily want to deal with crypto right now. It could be that they're still skeptical. It could be that they're waiting for regulations. Whatever the reason, right? So for them, a stablecoin, even though it is classed as a crypto, a stablecoin is basically a digital currency, right? It's a digital version of a fiat currency. So for example, RLUSD is just a digital representation of a dollar. That's it. That's all it is. So if you're thinking of a company who, for whatever reason, don't really want to deal with crypto right now, they would look to use stablecoins because it's the easiest thing to use connected to a dollar, right? And so you've got to understand that there's going to be companies who might be like, look, if we're not using stablecoins, we're not using crypto at all. We don't want to use crypto in that way. We're happy to use stablecoins. It's reliable. We know it's pegged to the dollar, so we know there's no worry about, like the volatility and that kind of thing. That's what we want to deal with. and obviously the dollar is the world reserve currency as well. So they might be thinking in their mind, like, yeah, we'll use RLUSD then on the XRP ledger, that's fine, because we're still using a stablecoin. So that's then bringing growth to the ecosystem, it's bringing volume, right? So you've got to understand that, like, some of these companies who are using RLUSD, they probably wouldn't have used XRP anyway. So it still ended up being a positive thing because the XRP ledger is now getting activity that it wouldn't have otherwise seen. Do you get my point? So for a lot of people who worry about RLUSD, look, like, I do get it. I understand the worries and things like that. But at the end of the day, if people want to use stablecoins, they was going to use stablecoins, right? It didn't have to be RLUSD. They could have been using, for example, USDC or USDT on the XRP ledger. So it really doesn't matter because it could have just been some other stablecoin. So at the end of the day, at least with them using RLUSD, that's primarily based on Ethereum and XRP. And so that's bringing activity to the XRP ledger if they're using the XRP ledger based one, which is what obviously Ripple intend to be the case. They want it to be based more on the XRP ledger over time. So I think that just shows you, like, this is helping to increase the activity in the XRP ledger. So it is a positive thing overall. Okay, just finishing. Evernorth's 5-year goal. Looking ahead, Burler said Evernorth aims to become a leader in generating yield from tokenized assets. The company plans to start with XRP before expanding into other tokenized assets as blockchain adoption grows. Its long-term goal is to use decentralized finance tools on the XRP ledger to help businesses and institutions make their on-chain holdings more productive. Yeah, absolutely. So, finishing up. When it comes to generating a yield with XRP, at the moment, I'm not in like DeFi or anything like that personally. Like, I've not, used my XRP to get a loan or anything like that. And the reason why is just because I just think the market is too volatile at this current moment in time, right? So the likelihood of you getting liquidated is going to be quite high in this current climate because, XRP and other cryptos, they go up and down like crazy amounts of percent. This isn't like the stock market, right? Because there's nowhere near as much liquidity in there. So it's very volatile. So you could, get XRP, like, for example, at the end of 2024, XRP was $3. Now we're back down to the $1 mark, right? So it shows you how quick things can change. And it's one of those things of, if you really aren't careful, it's very easy to get liquidated. It's very easy to get liquidated. So I just think at the moment, it's not something that I would want to do. But I just want to be clear, like, just because it's not something that I would personally do, doesn't mean that I'm right in what I'm saying. It comes down to people's risk appetite. So some people might do, all the due diligence. They might know exactly what the threshold is in terms of getting liquidated. Because you got to understand, there are companies that will say, look, if it gets to a certain point, if you can add more collateral to support it, just to support the threshold, not going over the threshold, then you won't get liquidated, right? So they might say, look, your XRP is at a point of, if it goes down, like, let's say another few cents, you're going to get liquidated. So they'll say you can either add some cash in, like add some money, fiat, or you can add some more XRP in. So you will have some companies that will give you the chance to try and save yourself from getting liquidated. But again, it comes down to how violent the drop is, because it might be that it's so violent that they don't even get a chance to notify you. Because if it's like a drop of, let's just say you have like a 40% drop, just for example. If it was just like a 40% drop straight away, you might be like, we didn't even get a chance to notify you because you just went straight through and just hit the threshold. So you just got liquidated automatically. That's it. So there's that kind of thing that could happen. So I'm not here to say, look, don't invest or like generate yield for your XRP. What I would say is, like, just make sure you do your research and you understand what you're doing and how you're doing this, because it does, it's not risk free, right? There is risks that come with this. But I'll be honest with you, I do agree with what Burler said earlier. He said, look, you work hard to get this XRP or any investment that you make, right? Even if you work a job, right? This is something that I saw before, and it was similar to what Burler said. You work a job to earn money, right? You've done all that graft, and at the end of the month, you get paid. And your thought process should be like, look, I've worked hard to earn this money. Now this money needs to work hard to make money for me, right? I've worked for that. Now that money needs to work for me. And that's where you think about investing in things. It doesn't just have to be crypto. You can invest into the stock market. You can invest into just government bonds. You can invest into property, whatever. Just looking at different ways of where you can just generate yield, extra money, that kind of thing. So I thought that was a really good sentiment, the thought process. I really like that. And so I agree. I don't want to just hold XRP forever. I do eventually want to get to a point where I am actually making a yield off of it, because I do intend to sell some XRP when it gets to a certain price point, but I don't intend to sell all of it. I actually intend to sell, just a bit of it, just a small chunk of it. But I do intend to keep the major amount, because I believe long term there'll be way more value that comes. So I do want to have a position where I have a certain amount of XRP that I'm willing to put in to, generate yield. But again, it will depend on what type of yield I go for. So I might not go for a DeFi option. I might go for more of a property option, as I said earlier. I might feel like it's a safer investment. It might not be as much of a return, but it might be a much safer option for me. Now, again, it comes down to your risk appetite. Some other people might be happy to do the DeFi option, where it's a bit more riskier, but they might feel like they know enough information on how to, do it successfully and get a higher return. It's going to be down to different people's preferences. But I do think, trying to get this XRP or whatever cryptos you've got to help work for you and help make you extra money, it's just a wise choice, because yes, it's great that you'll see these, XRP and other cryptos go up over time, but what about just in that period? If you're waiting 5 years for another bull run, for example, because who knows how long this is going to take now, you could have made X amount of money during that period. Do you see what I mean? Or if you just don't intend to sell, you might just be like, okay, I just want this to be an asset that just continues to appreciate in value. Maybe I'll sell it in 10, 15 years time, but during that period, I want to, make some passive income off of it. All these different options. So yeah, I definitely thought this was something worth sharing, but it's up to you guys what you want to do. So I'm not here to say it's a negative thing to do, the borrowing and stuff like that. I'm just saying that you need to understand what you're doing. That's all I'm saying. Just make sure you're doing your research. So hope this has helped, and hopefully it's given you some food for thought in regards to how you guys want to utilize your XRP going forward too. But I'll leave it there. If you did like this video, please remember to like, comment and subscribe so you can be updated for future XRP content. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can be alerted on when I do drop a new video. Thank you very much for watching this, and I'll see you all on the next one.